So for this live training session, we will be working on polishing your main menu. And what I mean by polish in this case is adding animation and sound to juice up the interactions with your main menu. So little highlight animations, transitions between the panels of the menu, sounds when you interact with things, and should be a lot of fun, not too advanced. I'm assuming that you know some of the basics of what the animator window and the animation window are like. There's almost no scripting, which is kind of interesting. I thought I was going to have to rely on scripting a lot more for this, but actually was able to do a lot with events and with animation. At the end of the training, we're going to write a few very tiny state machine behaviors, which are scripts that you can attach to states in the animator. And so that's going to be kind of cool. And I'm going to be building off of content that we created last week when we did creating a main menu. So you see it in the image there. So let's fade into Unity. So this is the completed version of what we'll do today. And so I'm continuing from the kind of basic multi-panel menu that I made in my previous training, which I'll put a link to, and you can find at the unity3d.com live training archive or on the Unity 3D YouTube channel. And so let's take a look at what we actually, let me turn, there's some little sounds here, so I'm going to turn up my volume. Let's take a look at what we're going to create. So I'm going to play my scene. So here we can see we have a nice little animated transition in. And then when we highlight our buttons, they do a little squish out. And they play a little whip sound. When we click the start button, actually I'll show you the other ones first. When we click the help button, it wipes in, does this kind of squash in transition for the help panel, and squashes back out for the back button. Audio works the same way. Start will play a little sound and fade to white before loading the next scene. And quit plays a different sound and fades to black. I've been getting these weird, I'm pretty sure these are editor errors. I'm just going to clear them and hide them for now so they don't distract me. And so that's what we're going to be creating. So we're going to be using the animator window quite a bit here, the animation window. We're going to be working with a lot of UI elements, many of which are already set up, but we're basically going to be adding animation to them. And so we've got Blaine in the chat. Blaine is in there. Thanks for joining us. He can answer some of your questions as we go, and then I'll be taking some breaks to answer questions from the chat as well. So let us begin. So I'm going to close this instance of Unity with the finished project, and I have behind it an instance of Unity with the project in the state where we left it last week, or 2 weeks ago at our previous training. So in its current state, I'll just play this and show you, we've got these sort of dark blue highlights, which are using the color transition mode in the UI, and we'll talk about that. And then we just cut between the panels when we select them, and we can start to load the scene, and we can quit, which will exit play mode in the editor, or quit the application if we're in a build. And this for selected was set. I actually don't want that. There's a little simple script that we wrote that's attached to each of the panels that detects if there is a keyboard or controller input and starts selecting buttons to allow it to work with the navigation. And then just really two simple scripts for the start button. There's a mono behavior that we're actually going to replace, and then for the quit button that do the start and the quit. Everything else is done with on-click events and UI elements. And so we're going to kind of continue with that low programming approach, doing a lot of stuff this time with animators and animation, along with the UI event system. So the first thing, let me just look at the chat and make sure that you guys can hear me and that stuff is working. Yeah, some questions about why is that selected? It's selected because you can choose a UI element and set it as the first selected object in the event system. So it'll be automatically selected, and that will help it to work with a controller or a keyboard navigation if you don't have this little script that we wrote that's checking for input and then will select whichever button. In this case, it'll select the start button. So now if I play the scene, then just push the down arrow, it will automatically select. And then once something is selected, I can begin using navigation. And that was something we covered last time, but maybe worth mentioning. All right. So what we want to do is we want to set up a kind of a template button that we're going to use and copy for our other buttons. So I'm going to do it with the help button to start. So I'm going to highlight the help button. And what I want to do is I want to set up transitions for the button that are going to be animated. So right now in the button component here, the transition is set to color tint. And that's why we're getting this dark blue tint when we either mouse over or select the button with the keyboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this now to the animation transition mode. And what this is going to do is allow us to play animations when the button enters these different states. So normal, which is unhighlighted, highlighted, pressed, or disabled. Now there's a really useful little feature here, which is this auto-generate animation button. What this will do is create an animator controller with 4 states and 4 animation clips, along with transitions for each of these states, trigger transitions for each of these states, or trigger parameters in order to transition between the states. So a lot of boilerplate work being done for us with this automation. So we're going to click that button. It's going to ask us to create a controller. I am going to make a new animation folder to put all this stuff in. And I'm going to call this button controller and hit save. And so now it's added an animator component. If we double click on it, it's going to open the animator window, right? I'm going to assume that you know a little bit about the animator window. The short version of this is that we have these states which control what animation is currently playing, and we can transition between them to play different animation clips, and we can control the rules for when those transitions will happen and also specify when we want transitions to start via script. So notice we've got a state for normal, highlighted, pressed, and disabled. Normal is set as the default state. That's why it's orange. And there's this transition from the entry node here. We'll put this up here into normal. So as soon as this starts, it's going to transition to the normal state. And then if we look at the list of parameters here, we can see that we have the parameters for normal, highlighted, pressed, and disabled, which are going to allow us to, we'll see here, for example, to transition from any state to normal, the condition for it is normal. Right? And we'll be using this a bit, so we'll talk about this a bit more. If you've never seen the animator before, we'll be using it, and I'll explain as I go. So what we need is now we have basically empty animations for each of these states, and the one we're interested in is this highlighted state. So in order to edit it, I'm going to highlight the Help button, choose Window, Animation, and I'm going to dock this in the same tab here. And actually, maybe no, I think it's good there. And so what I want to do is I want to squish out the scale horizontally when the button becomes highlighted. So I'm going to do this by adding some keyframes. If you don't know what a keyframe is, it basically specifies the goal point for an animation to get to, and then anything between those keyframes will be interpolated. So if we're trying to go from point A to point B, we will specify point A, point B, and the animation system will create the frames in between, moving between those 2 points. So what we need is we need to select, first of all, from this menu here, the animation that we want to edit. So I'm going to choose highlighted and then add property. Now, the component that I want to animate is the rect transform, so I'm going to unfold that, and I want to adjust the anchor maximum and the anchor minimum. Let's start with the anchor maximum. Notice when we click that, it adds 2 keyframes at the beginning and the end of the animation. Now, we're going to want to start in this same state with this, I'm sorry, not the anchor, I'm thinking of something else, not the anchor maximum. Delete, remove property. I want to do the scale. So it gives us these 2 keyframes, right? The beginning point and the end point. And what we want to do is say maybe over the course of 10 frames, we're going to raise this scale. So I'm going to add a keyframe here at 10 frames. And I'm just going to adjust this value. So I'm going to go over here to the X scale on the rect transform. This is for the help button. And I'm just going to type in 1.1. We'll see that it changes. We can see it kind of flattens out here or stretches out. And now it's going to be fast, but if we play it, we can see it's going out, but then it's also going back and resetting, right? And we don't really want it to do that. So we actually just want it to go one way, so we can delete this later keyframe. And now we just have this short animation of it going out and then staying. And if we loop it, it's just going to go, if we play it, it's going to loop really fast. But that's what we want. So the other thing that we want to add here is a changing color, right? I want the color to get lighter. So I can do that by adding another property, in this case for the image component, and its color, right? And now all I need to do is select the point where I want the keyframe to be added, and actually I can just change the color directly, because as you can see, this record button is enabled in the animation window, and that means now that changes that I make in these parameters that are red are going to have keyframes written for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lighten this out, not all the way white, but maybe this kind of nice pale blue. And that's going to add that keyframe for me. So now if I scrub back and forth, we can see that it's stretching out and taking on this nice highlighted color. So that's actually all we need to do to add that animation. And because we've used, let's turn off record mode and put the animator on screen, play. Now let's actually go out of maximize mode so we can see both happen. Now if I mouse over this, we can see that the animator is transitioning to the highlighted state and our animation is playing, but it's looping crazily, right? And that's because we need to turn off the loop property for the highlighted animation. So I'm going to exit play mode, select the highlighted animation, and turn off loop time, right? Now let's try it. So you can see the animator is going to update in real time, right? So we can see right now we're in the normal state, nothing is happening. And now when I highlight the help animation, it transitions to that state. So that's nice. So we're going to use that and apply it actually to all of our other buttons. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to unfold the help and audio panels. I'm using Control-click to select their back buttons, and then I'm going to select the Quit, Audio, and Start button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit, Selection, Save Selection 1. So I'm going to save these as a selection so that I can recall these 5 buttons all at once when I need to. So now I'm going to highlight the Help button and copy the animator controller, or the animator component with the button controller in it. So now we'll reload our selection. You could use Control-Shift-1 to do that. And, oh, what do I have? I have selected something that I don't want. What did I have, an animator state machine? Whoa, I didn't even know you could do that. That's funny. I made a bad selection. There we go. Okay, so now we can see, right, we can edit all of these simultaneously with them all selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste component as new, right? I'm going to use the context-sensitive gear menu and paste component as new. That's going to add this animator with the controller that we just edited, and I'm going to change the transition mode to animation for everything. So now they should all interact in the same way. Let's test. Play. Very good. And you can see the reason that we're only seeing the help button highlighted is because that's the last animator controller that we opened, right? So we're just seeing the animator for the help button. But so this looks nice, right? We have this little animated highlight for each of our buttons. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a little sound to that. But before I do that, let me just look at the chat and see if there are any questions. Oh, and that, yeah, those asking, how am I getting my canvas to show this way? It's using the canvas scaler. I'm using the scale with screen size setting set to so I can see it at what it's going to look like properly without having to maximize. Let's just see. Question, should there just be one canvas scaler? Yeah, pretty sure there should only be one. I'm just using one canvas for this whole UI. You can have multiple canvases, but generally speaking, if it's one menu, you can probably do it with one canvas. It's not really a reason to have multiple unless like one is screen space and one is world space, for example. Okay, so let's continue. So we've got our button highlights. We want to add a little sound to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a empty game object called menu sounds, and this is just going to be a holder for several other objects, and this will be button highlight sound. And then we're going to add a audio source component and add an audio clip. Now I need to import my audio clip, so I'm going to create a new folder called audio and open that up, and then I have them here in a Explorer window in Windows, and I'm just going to drag them in. So these are just a series of WAV files. I got these from the VR samples asset pack, so they're not included in this sample UI asset pack that we're using. And I'll post a link to the asset pack later if you can't find it on the asset store for both of them. These are actually sounds that I made for the VR samples project. That was my contribution, was making the sound design and the music, which was pretty fun. And so I'm just going to reuse them here for they were the same thing there. They were menu sounds. And so we're just going to reuse them here. So I'll just play them quickly. We have menu close, menu open, or gaze over in this case, because that was a gaze UI. A little menu load sound. Some smooth music, which we can maybe put in later. And then a second select load sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our little menu gaze over sound to this audio source. We're going to turn off play on awake, right? Because we don't want it to play when the scene starts. And then we are going to add to our help button, our template button, we're going to add a component called an event trigger. This is actually something that I just learned about in the case of making this session, but it's really cool because we've seen the on-click events for buttons, which are events that are raised when a button is clicked, but there are actually a bunch of other events that we can raise using this event trigger. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new event type, and here we can see the whole list of events that can be used, can be triggered. So pointer enter, pointer exit, pointer down, pointer up, drag, drop, scroll, select, deselect, a whole bunch of others. So really, really useful. So what we're going to do is we're going to do pointer enter, and then we're going to add an event to that. So it's just like the on-click events for the button component, but in this case, we can choose what type of interaction with the UI is going to trigger it. And then again, we can make a list of things that will happen when that when that interaction occurs. So I'm going to drag in my button highlight sound, navigate to the audio source, and call the play function. So now, if we play the scene, whoop, very cool. So we can see, I'm getting this weird error. This is, I believe, a Unity editor error. I have to file a bug report. And so we can see that when the pointer enters that UI element, this event is raised, and in this case, this sound is played. Now, in order to have this work with both mouse and keyboard or controller, we need to actually add another event type, which is the select event. Because if you, well, I'm not going to demonstrate it not working, but basically, and this helpfully grabs the same source and the same function, so that should just work. Because if you select something with the keyboard, it doesn't count as a pointer enter, which is interesting, but kind of good to have separate control. And then we are going, now I'll push the keyboard button, and we can see that it works for both mouse and keyboard. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, let's see if I can do it with the keyboard, Control-Shift-1 to switch, oh, oops, no. First, I got to copy the component. So I'm going to copy the event trigger component and then push my Control-Shift-1 3-finger button combo and bring back up my selection that I saved, right? And then paste component as new. And so that is going to now add those sound events to all of our buttons, including our back buttons and so on. So very nice. And now we can move on to, so we've got our buttons working the way we want with our highlight animations and our sounds. And the next thing that we need is transitions between our menu panels. So we're going to do the main menu panel first. Before I do that, let me just look at the chat. Yeah, the Starbucks says, I learned something new, event trigger. I totally didn't know about that either. I was going to do it a really janky way, and I asked Adam Buckner, and he pointed that out to me, and I was like, oh my God, so cool. So that's a nice one. Glenn Hunter asks, I'm assuming the event trigger has to be attached to the button object. Yes, very important, right? It has to be attached, or has to be attached to the UI object that is going to raise the event, right? In this case, on pointer enter, let's go back to the help button. On pointer enter, or pointer enter gets, the event gets fired when we enter our pointer into the help button specifically, right? So it's attached to the help button. It has to enter that UI element. You know, it could be something else, a slider or a panel or whatever, but it has to, it's tracking whether the pointer enters the bounds of that rect transform, I assume. All right, so let's set up our panel transition. So we're going to start with the main menu panel. So we're going to start by creating the animation. So I'm going to go to the animation window and hit the create button, which is going to create an animator and an animation clip. Create, and we're going to call this main menu open. And hit save. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate the anchors of the rect transform to give it this kind of squash in effect. And so we're going to add a property to the rect transform for the anchor max. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the anchor max to 0. And we're also going to set what they're calling the size delta x, which is basically the offset in pixels between where the edge actually is and where the anchor is. And we're going to set that to 0. So what that now does is, now we're going to have this very long, slow animation, right? What we're going to do is we are going to, oh, and I want to set the the other anchor here. Can I just do it or do I need, yeah. So just zeroing that out will create the keyframe for me. I'm going to set that to 0 as well. And so 0 in this case is the leftmost edge of the screen. So now we've got this, and we just want to pull this back in. Oh, wait, I broke something. Undo. Go back. This is what we want. This is going to go here. And this is going to go to 0, 0. Totally wrong. Weird. Oh, because it's not getting the max. All right, let me just, that's weird. Or it's not getting the min. This should be 0.25. And 0. All right. So now we've got our nice little transition in, but we can see our text is kind of now hanging out in space, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add a fade in on this panel. So to do that, I'm going to add a component to the main menu panel, which is a canvas group component. This is part of the UI system, and basically the reason I use this a lot is to add alpha control to a whole UI element, right? So we're going to want this to be at 1 here and at 0 at the start of the animation. And so now we have it fades in and stretches in. Whoop. Very nice. Okay. And so in terms of the animator, so let's click over to the animator window. This animation, if we play the scene, it's going to loop, right, which we don't want. So let's fix that. Main menu panel asset. I don't know why these ended up in audio. Let's put them in animation. It's because audio is selected. The main menu open animation clip asset, we're going to turn off loop time. And now let's test. A little glitch there. Whoop. There we go. Okay, so we can see, I think it doesn't like playing the animator and the thing window at the same time. We can see that it animates in automatically because it's transitioning by default to the main menu open, which for this panel only we actually want. We're going to make a second animator controller for the other panels, which is not going to default to open. It's going to default to closed. So what we need is we need another state to close this panel, to zip it back over this way. So I'm going to highlight the panel again. I'm going to click in this window, use Control A to select all, Control C to copy, choose Create New Clip from up here, right, from where we would select our clip, and we're going to choose Main Menu. We're going to call it Main Menu Close. Hit Save. Then I'm just going to click in the animation window and paste. And all I need to do here is just make sure I select these and then just swap their positions in time, right? So now we're going to start closed. So we're going to start open and go to closed, right? So in the animator, that's added a new state for us, right? And so we need to configure the state machine so that it will do the things we want when we want. So we're going to need to, when it's time to close the panel, we're going to need to make a transition from main menu open to main menu close. So I'm going to right click on main menu open, choose make transition, and then drag this line here to make menu close, main menu close. And it's going to make the menu close. And so what I'm going to do is highlight that line and click on the little triangle there. And right now we have no parameters for this animator controller. So we are going to want two parameters that we are going to set. The first is going to be a trigger parameter called open, and the second is going to be a trigger parameter called close. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose trigger, add a new parameter called trigger, and then click the plus button here to add a new parameter called close. So going from open to close, we are going to add a condition. So we're going to highlight the transition, the line. Turn off has exit time. Has exit time is going to mean, are we going to wait for a specific time before we initiate our transition? Or are we going to do it, if we turn it off, it's going to be immediate, which is what we're going to want. So then we're going to add a condition to our list, clicking the plus button. And by default, that defaults to open, which happens to be the one that we want. So we don't need to change it. Next, we're going to set a transition from main menu close back to open. And for this, we're going to highlight the transition, turn off has exit time, hit plus to add another condition, and in this case, it's going to be close, which we'll select from the drop-down menu. So now we can use the animator.setTrigger function to set these triggers, which will then cause our animations to play. So let's set that up now in the inspector. So what I'm going to do is, let's say our help button first, we're going to want to display the help panel and play the animation to close the main menu panel. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an on-click event. So previously, in the previous training, we were just using GameObject.setActive on the main menu panel to turn it on and off. Now we're going to choose, instead of GameObject.setActive, we're going to choose animator.setTrigger, and we're going to choose string. Now we just need to type the string. Now make sure that you type it exactly the same, right? It's a string, so it needs to match, right? So in this case, capital C, close. Okay, so now when I click my help button, it's going to do two things. It's going to set active the help panel game object, which is the way we had it before, and it's going to send the trigger message, or set the trigger for the animator component attached to main menu panel to cause us to transition from main menu open to main menu close. So let's see that in action. Let's turn off this so we don't accidentally animate things that we don't want to. You can see it's on, right, because this is red. And then we are going to, let's put the animator in front so we can see it, hit play. Oh, I'm going to maximize. Anyway, go to help, click it, and it totally doesn't work for some reason. And that reason is animator set trigger close on the help button. That should be right. Main menu close. There's that. That looks correct. What have I missed? What have I missed, chat? Close, game object set active. Huh. It all seemed so simple. Oh, because I did open, not close. Close. I flipped them. Because I'm very intelligent, that's why. Okay, let's try it again. Play. Woo! Okay, that's looping, right? We don't want that. So let's go get our close animation, turn off loop time. Whoop. Okay, very good. So now what we want to accompany our closing animation is a closing sound. So I'm just going to duplicate this button highlight sound, and we're going to call this close sound, and we're going to switch it to menu close sound effect. And then when we push the help button here, we're going to add an on-click event and drag in our close sound and audio source play. Let's give it a try. Very nice. Okay, good. So now we need to, so we've got the transition in and transition out for the help panel, for the main menu panel, sorry. The next thing we need to do is the help panel. So let's do our help panel. So first of all, I'm going to enable it, And then I'm just going to copy my animation for my main menu panel. So let's go to Animation, Open, select all those keyframes, Control-C to copy, go to the Help panel, create a new clip. This is going to be Help panel, Open, save. I need to add the canvas group component before I forget, lest my animation complain about it not being there. And then I'm going to paste in those keyframes. So now the help panel is coming from the same side, but we actually want to flip the side it's coming from. So what we're going to do is just set these to be, let's highlight it. We'll do it in the inspector. We're going to set the minimum and maximum to 1 instead of 0. So 1 is going to be the far right side of the screen, and we'll zero out the offsets. And there we go. And it's got the alpha fade in there, and that's all we need to do for that. We can actually just reuse that copy, and we're going to go to create new clip, and this will be help panel close. Click in the window, paste, and then we're just going to swap these. There we go. All right, cool. So the last thing that we want to do is the next thing that we want to do is to set up the animator controller for this. And for this, we don't want to immediately open the panel. We want to wait until the button is pressed. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, I'm going to right click just in the background here, choose create state, empty. So this is going to have an empty state with no animation associated with it. And then I'm going to right click and choose set as layer default state. So we're going to transition to this from the entry node by default. Then, depending on what is happening, we're going to transition to open, and we're going to need, again, our parameters, trigger open, and add trigger close. And so we're going to transition from, let's call this state idle, because this is just going to be waiting, doing nothing. From idle to open, no has exit time, and the condition will be open in this case, right? Idle, we're opening, yes. And then from here, we can transition to close. In this case, the condition is close, turn off has exit time, and then from close, we can go back to open if we want to. For this, the condition, again, is open. I think I got that right that time. And we also just want to make sure that both of these animations are not looping before I do that again. And now for the help button, we're going to set those triggers. So instead of using GameObject.setActive, now we're going to do animator set trigger open. And while we're at it, in the back button, we are going to choose Help Panel Animator. So this is when you click back, it's going to call Animator Set Trigger Close and Main Menu Panel Animator.SetTrigger Open. And the last thing that we want to do, and kind of the reason that we made that idle state, is because we want to just set the starting position. Let's make sure recording is off, right? We want to set the start position for our help panel to be all the way over to the right side. So we're going to set this to 1, this to 1, this to 0, and this to 0. So now it's all the way over here. And, oh wait. Yeah, no, that was right? Let's see. Yeah. And then, nope, not you. And then the alpha is going to be 0 as well. So now, let's test. Animate in. Whoop. Whew. And then we just need to add that button sound. I should have actually done that to... Let's actually do that to all the buttons. We are going to, let's select the help button. Oh, no, it's in the onClick event. No, that won't work. Okay, so we just need to add close sound. I can't copy that. We just need to add close sound here. Audio source, play for that back button. And here, let's just add it while I'm thinking about it. Close sound, audio source, play. Okay. All right. So now, instead of creating a third unique animator controller for the audio panel, we can use what's called an animator override controller. So we need to still make the animation clips, but we don't need to set up a new controller with the parameters and everything. So I'll show you how that works. So first of all, we do need to set up our clips. So I'm going to select the keyframes for open, activate this, hit create, and then this will be audio panel open. Paste those clips in. It's giving me a yellow warning because I forgot to add the canvas group, but we can add it after the fact. Do that, and then click in the window, and that'll link up. And in comes the audio panel, and then we just need to create a new clip for audio panel close, and paste and swap. And so when we created the clips, it actually created an animator controller, which we're not going to use because it's just going to take extra steps to set it up. What we're going to use instead is if we right click to get to the create menu in the animation folder, we can choose an animator override controller. The animator override, we'll call this audio panel override. What this does is allows us to use another animator controller and its state machine as a template, which is pretty cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the help panel, drop it in the controller, and then now it shows us the states here. So here we have help panel open and help panel close, which are currently playing the help panel open and close clips, but we can replace those with the audio panel open and audio panel close clips and reuse that state machine. The last thing we need to do is just set the animator override controller in the controller field of the animator component of the thing we want to animate. So if you have situations where you're doing a lot of the stuff with the same state machine but different animation clips, this is a great way to do it. Really much easier. Okay, now we just need to set up the logic. So let's go to audio button. Again, right, we're not going to be using set active. We're going to go to set trigger and add close. And then here we're going to go to set trigger open. And on the back button, we are going to go to animator set trigger close and animator set trigger open. And let's give it a try. Play. Oh, okay. So here, I had this problem before. The problem is that, oh yes, we didn't set the, so what's happening now is that the alpha is turned all the way down, but the panel is still over our main menu. So it's misbehaving. So make sure, right, probably better to, before you turn the alpha down, to, in the idle state, to set the anchors the way you want them. So I'm going to set the X and the Y to 1, get rid of the offsets, and now set the alpha to 0, just so I can see what's going on. Play. And of course, I forgot to turn off looping. You guys are not on. Whoop. Very nice. Okay, cool. So that covers our transitions for our buttons and panels. And now there are just two more things to do, which are the fade to white for start and the fade to black for quit, for which we're going to do some state machine behaviors. So let me just look at the chat and see how everybody's doing, and then I will continue. DStew99 asks what version of Unity I'm using. This is 5.3. 5.4 F2. I have no idea what version of Unity I'm using. This is the latest release. Not a beta, but the latest. I don't know if it's actually the latest patch, but it's the latest point release. I always try to use the latest point release when I'm streaming. Please test the UI with the keyboard. Sure. Oh, yeah. So here there's an issue with the navigation where we can't go back with the keyboard. I will show you how to fix that in a second. It's because if we look at this, if we go to like the scene view, the navigation is, because both of these panels are active, the navigation is going a little haywire. It's a little tedious, but I'll show you how to fix it. Yeah, no problem. It's a good question. Okay, so let's just do our last two things. We're going to talk quickly-ish about state machine behaviors because those are kind of cool. And then I'll show the navigation thing, and we can try to figure out those other questions that came up that I can't remember and you can remind me of. All right, so let me just have a sip of coffee. Definitely still iced coffee weather here in New York. Super humid today. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to fold these up, and I'm going to add to the canvas an empty child, and I'm going to add to it an image component, which I'm going to, using the anchor presets for the rect transform, I'm going to alt-click the stretch and fill the screen with white. And this will be fade to white is the name of this game object. And then I'm going to use a canvas group, again, just for the alpha. Let's start it at 0. Then we're going to go to animation and create a new animation. And this will be fade to white. We're going to add property for the canvas group. You guessed it, alpha. And here, just over the course of a second, we are going to go from clear all the way to white. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little buffer at the end. I'm just going to add a keyframe and have it get to white earlier so that it sits on white for a second. Not a second, for roughly 10 frames. Yeah. Now, you notice here, if you look at the inspector, you see how it's overshooting and then going back down? That's because of the curves. You can see it's made this little curve here. And what I'm going to do is just flatten that. It doesn't actually matter, but just in case you're wondering what that is, we're just going to flatten that curve. See? In this case, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's alpha. You can't have a positive alpha value. But anyway, or an alpha value greater than 1. All right, so now we just need to trigger this. And the way we're going to do that is with the animator controller. And again, so we're going to need a idle state to wait until the button has been clicked. And that is going to be the default layer state. Then we're going to transition. Whoops, oh, I mislabeled. Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Oh, I just relabeled the wrong one. I'm going to call that fade. And this is going to be idle. And the condition here is going to be a trigger called fade. And we're going to add it to our list. Fade, turn off has exit time, so that when we click the button, it will fade. Now, we're going to do another thing in here, which is that we're going to add another empty state. Transition from fade to the new state. The new state is going to be called load. And we are going to use has exit time for this. So it's going to wait until the fade ends, till that state is finished playing, and then transition over. And before I forget, let me just turn off looping. And for the load state, I'm going to highlight it, and then I'm going to click here, add behavior. And this is going to be called load on enter. I'm going to make a new script, click create and add, and that's going to attach this script to this state in the animator. Now when we double click it to open it in our favorite script editor, MonoDevelop, we will see that this does not derive from MonoBehavior. It is a state machine behavior. So it's a different type of behavior. And it has different callbacks. MonoBehavior gets things like start and update. State machine behavior doesn't have those. Instead, it has, I believe among others, but at the bare minimum, these commented out callbacks that you see here with comments that describe what they do. So on state enter is called when a transition starts and the state machine starts to evaluate this state. So in this case, that's actually what we're going to do. So when we get to this state, we are going to load our next scene. So I'm going to add using Unity Engine.Scene Management, which is the new API for loading scenes, which is now in its own namespace, which it didn't used to be before. And then we're going to say scene manager.load scene 1. I'm going to do it by index, right? So that's going to load this random sample scene, which is at index 1 in our build settings, which are under file build settings. So I'm loading by scene index. Okay, that's all we need. Save, convert. And so now, once we're done fading, we're going to go to the load state, and this, when we enter the load state, this this function is going to be called. So we just need to set up our, in the main menu panel for the start button, we just need to set up the onClick event for that. And that is going to be, so before we had a MonoBehavior attached to the button and we were just calling the load scene directly. I'm going to remove that MonoBehavior and drag in a reference to our fade to white object, select its animator and choose set trigger and type in fade. And let's also add our nice sound. This is going to be load sound. Use menu load for the sound and make an onClick event for that. Drag in load sound and choose audio source play. And now we play our scene. Oh, what's going wrong? Oh. This is a key error here, teachable moment. Fade to white. This image needs to be marked as not interactable and not blocking raycast. So in this case, adding the canvas group there made it think like, oh, there's a panel that should block the things behind it. No. We want it to just be clear and to not block our clicks when we try to click buttons. There we go. And so we're going to click start. And it didn't load the scene. What happened? What happened? Whoops, nope. Load scene 1. Load. Oh, what? Well, that's interesting. Where'd my thing go? I mean, okay, right? But, okay. I don't think that was my fault. There we go. All right, so it works. I don't know what that was, but if that happens to you, double click and make sure somehow your script didn't get nuked. It's probably a bug that I have to file a report on. Yay, bug reports. What we're gonna do is we are going to repurpose this for our fade to black. So I'm actually just going to duplicate the fade to white object and call it fade to black. Set the color to black. And I'm going to duplicate the animator controller and call this fade to black. And with it highlighted, I'm going to change the load state. So I'm going to remove load on enter, add another behavior called quit on enter. Create an add, and I'm actually going to reuse from my quit on click script, which was just a public quit function that just either exits play mode or quits the application. That before I was triggering with the on-click event. Now I'm just going to copy that and add it to my double-click on quit on enter to open it. I'm going to add at the bottom my quit function here and then call it the same way. Quit. So now when we enter this state, we're going to quit. We're going to call that quit function. So, and let's just relabel this. Quit. And we can add a sound. Oh, we got to wire it up, right? So we're going to get rid of this quit on click mono behavior. And instead, we're going to call fade to black, animator, set trigger, and fade is still going to be the parameter, which is fine. And then we are going to add a quit sound with this slightly inappropriate quitting sound, this menu select. And on the quit button, we're going to add an on-click event, quit sound, audio source, play. And let's see if that works. Play. Nope. Oh, I forgot to change the animator controller. So it's still using fade to white, right? So we are going to change the fade to white controller to fade to black. And there we go. And it quits. The last thing that we'll do just for funsies is add an audio source with some lovely music, which is going to play on awake and is going to loop, and we're going to set the volume down to 0.5. And so now, we should have an audio fade out, right, for the music, but we don't. Actually, if you want to, couple little other references before I finish. If you want to hook up these sliders and have nice audio transitions for the music, I did a previous menu training called Game Jam Menu Template, which is a very simple menu, but has sliders for audio that connect to the mixer and has a nice fade out for the music and stuff. So you could grab that stuff there if you're curious. And that actually, the finished product, there is a package on the asset store that you can just grab and just grab the scripts and everything from. Although that one is more script driven and this is more like event and animator driven. So it's kind of different. But anyway, you might want to grab that. And yeah. Oh, okay. Before we wrap, I want to show. So one of the issues that's created by the way I did this is that the navigation, the automatic navigation. So for the panel, or sorry, for the where is this? Where's the navigation again? I forget. There's a place to set this. For the canvas. Is it for the button? Now, oh yeah. So per UI element, in this case, the navigation is automatic, which right now is trying to go from start over to here which is not good, right? Oh, yes. Mr. Roll Roti suggests if you disable the interactable option on the canvas groups when the panel is closed, it should fix your nav problem. That's a good idea. Let's see if we can do that real quick. Let's go to Help button, and let's see if we can do that from the events. I mean, obviously we could write a script for it, but let's do add an event, and this will be Help panel. Canvas group bool interactable is true, and then let's set it to false when it's not on screen. Let's see if that does it. Oh, and I need to do right. So when I pull this up, I need to set the other one too. We need another one, which is going to be main menu panel, canvas group, interactable, false. Let's try that. Yes, totally works. Okay, so for those of you guys doing controller-based navigation, right, make sure that you toggle the canvas groups to interactable on and off as you switch between panels. Thank you, Mr. Roll Roti. Terrific. Good suggestion. And Mr. Roll Roti suggests you could do the enable disable stuff in the animation. That's a great point too. Yeah, that would be a good idea actually. We could do it with the when we're animating the alpha on the canvas group. That's a really good suggestion. Thanks. All right, somebody followed me on Twitter. Cool. Yeah, Twitter is a pretty good way to keep up with what I do. I'm pretty active on there, and I definitely tweet about these trainings before they start and stuff, and any of the other tutorials and stuff we make. Obviously, the Unity Twitter sends stuff out as well, at Unity 3D. I'm at Matt Mirafish. All right. Oscar Ruzzo, also, could you explain how the finite state machine transitioned to the load state without any trigger? No, it had a trigger. Oh, no, it didn't have a trigger. Yes, you're right. Okay. So it transitions. Where am I? Fade to white. It goes from fade to load because we're using has exit time. That's the condition. The animation is finished playing. The exit time is the end of the animation, which you can define here if you want to change it. And it goes. And in fact, we really want to just like make it all the way over so it just really finishes. Yeah. Okay. My understanding about has exit time is that it is when you're allowed to start transitioning out of the state. Like, I think it's most important in stuff like walk cycles, where you don't want like the leg to be up in the air when you shift into a jump or something like that, that you have to like wait for it to cycle back around before you start doing something else. That's my understanding of it. Mond Herbal asks, is it possible using the animator for jumping between panels to return to the previous panel in the middle of the transition? Yeah, you can, because again, talking about has exit time, as long as you don't use has exit time and you have a trigger set up and it's not like a button that you need to click while it's moving, if it's like the keyboard or something like that, then yeah, if you hit it, it should, as long as has exit time is false, and you set the trigger, it should be immediate. Oscar Ruzzo, yeah, if I turn off has exit time, it gives me a warning saying transition needs at least one condition or an exit time to be valid, otherwise it will be ignored. Yeah. So has exit time is kind of like your default transition condition. Gideon303 asks, why was the text not aligned when you animated to the left? It's probably because, let's look at that. I noticed that too, and I just kind of ignored it. The start, all of the other ones are. It's just got to be the setting for the start. The text, let's look at the text. The text is centered here. Oh, and these are centered too. Overflow, overflow. Those are both set to overflow. Is it the width? Oh yeah, look, it's this. It's because for some reason the position on that text got messed up. If we zero everything out, and then, oh, maybe, is that why? Is it left? It's weird. It should be like that. They should all be stretch. There we go. I don't know why that one would be different, but that should make it work. That's just some bug from the way I did it last time. There you go. Just one of those being funny. Okay. All right, guys. So I'm going to jump off. I'm going to cut my mic and cut the stream, but I'll keep the chat open if you guys think of any other questions. And thanks for coming out. Great to see you all. Welcome to everybody new, and always good to see the regulars popping up in the chat. So thanks again. Bye.